Before the world knew his name, before the bright lights of America's Got Talent and the thunder of applause, there was a small, forgotten corner of the Philippines where dreams struggled just to breathe. The sun rose early there, not gently, but harshly, beating down on narrow dirt roads and tin-roofed houses packed closely together, as if leaning on each other for strength. In one of those homes lived a carpenter and his son. The father woke before dawn every day. His alarm clock wasn't a phone or a watch, it was hunger. Hunger for survival. Hunger for hope. He washed his face with cold water, pulled on the same faded shirt, and reached for his tools, a cracked hammer, rusted nails, and a measuring tape worn thin from years of use. These tools were heavy, not because of their weight, but because of the burden they carried, years of sacrifice, sweat, and silent prayers. His son watched him from the doorway. The boy was small for his age, his slippers torn, his school uniform neatly pressed despite its faded color. He never complained. He never asked why life was harder for them than for others. Instead, he listened. He listened to the rhythm of his father's hammer striking wood, day after day. In those sounds, he found music. Their house was barely more than a single room. When it rained, water slipped through the roof. When the sun burned hot, the heat stayed trapped inside. Yet, in that fragile home lived something stronger than concrete walls, a dream. The boy didn't dream of toys or expensive clothes. He dreamed of a microphone. He dreamed of a stage. He dreamed of a future where his father no longer had to break his back just to survive. Years earlier, that dream had carried him across the ocean, all the way to the United States. He had stood on the AGT stage for the first time, trembling, his voice cracking not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. He sang not as a child seeking fame, but as a son trying to save his family. The judges were impressed. The audience applauded. But when the lights faded and the cameras stopped rolling, reality returned. Life did not suddenly become easy. Back home, the father returned to carpentry. The boy returned to school. Fame is loud, but poverty is persistent. There were nights when dinner was little more than rice and hope. Nights when the father stared at the ceiling, wondering if he had failed his son. Nights when the boy held his old microphone, scratched, barely working, and whispered songs into the darkness, promising himself he would try again. He practiced everywhere. He sang while walking to school. He sang while helping his father sand wood. He sang when the power went out and the house went dark. His voice grew stronger, deeper, richer, seasoned by hardship. Each note carried the weight of every nail his father had hammered, every calloused hand that had built someone else's dream while his own remained unfinished. The father noticed the change. He saw it in the way his son stood taller. In the way he sang with closed eyes, as if already imagining a crowd. In the way his voice no longer shook, it soared. Still, fear lived quietly between them. Dreams are dangerous when you are poor. Hope can break you if it fails. But love is louder than fear. One evening, after a long day of work, the father sat beside his son. His hands were swollen, his back bent with exhaustion. He looked at the boy and spoke softly, his voice carrying years of struggle. "Sing again." The boy sang. Not loudly. Not for applause. But with everything he had. The father closed his eyes. Tears slipped down his weathered face, not because of sadness, but because he knew. He knew this voice was different. He knew this dream was real. And in that moment, he made a decision no carpenter ever wants to make. He would risk everything. They applied again to America's Got Talent. Weeks passed. Then months. Then one ordinary day, a message arrived. An invitation. A second chance. The boy read it again and again, his hands shaking. His father hugged him tightly, as if afraid the dream might disappear if he let go. They had no money to waste, no guarantees, but they had faith. As they packed, the house felt smaller than ever. The father folded his only good shirt. The boy packed his worn microphone. Neighbors whispered prayers. Some smiled with hope. Others doubted. But the boy didn't listen. This time, he wasn't returning as a nervous child. He was returning as a survivor. As the airplane lifted off, the boy looked out the window at the land below, the streets, the rooftops, the life that had shaped him. He whispered a promise to himself and to his father. This time, I will not just sing. I will be heard. When the AGT stage finally came into view again, its lights brighter than ever, the boy stood quietly backstage. The noise of the crowd was distant, like a storm waiting to break. He placed his hand on his chest, feeling his heart race, not with fear, but with purpose. This wasn't just another audition. This was the moment where years of sawdust, sweat, hunger, and hope would finally meet the spotlight. And somewhere in the audience, unseen but deeply felt, every sacrifice was listening. Thousands of faces disappear into darkness while a single spotlight ignites at the center of the stage. The air is thick with anticipation, the kind that presses against the chest. From backstage, the boy stands perfectly still. He can hear his heartbeat louder than the crowd. Each beat carries a memory. Each breath carries a promise. A stagehand gives him the signal. It's time. He steps forward. The moment his shoes touch the AGT stage, the noise of the audience fades into a low, distant hum. This stage is larger than anything he has ever known, wider than his neighborhood streets, brighter than the sun that once beat down on tin roofs. For a brief second, he feels small. Then he remembers his father's hands. Calloused, bleeding, unbreakable. He lifts his chin. The judges sit before him, icons of a world far removed from his own. Heidi smiles warmly. Sophia watches with curiosity. Howie leans forward, intrigued. Simon Cowell, the man whose approval can change lives, sits with arms crossed, expression unreadable. He has seen thousands of singers. Too many dreams. Too many disappointments. Simon doesn't expect to be surprised. The boy grips the microphone with both hands. It feels heavier than it should, not because of its weight, but because of what it represents. Every struggle. Every night without food. Every prayer whispered into darkness. The music begins. Soft. Gentle. The boy closes his eyes. Then he sings. The first note cuts through the theater like a blade of light. It is clear. Controlled. Strong. A sound far bigger than the body it comes from. The audience shifts in their seats, sensing something different. This isn't noise. This is truth. His voice rises, smooth yet trembling with emotion. Each lyric is shaped by lived experience. When he sings about pain, it is real pain. When he sings about hope, it is earned hope. He isn't performing, he's remembering. The camera cuts to Simon. His posture changes. The crossed arms loosen. The guarded expression fades. His eyes narrow slightly, not in doubt, but in focus. He leans forward without realizing it. Back on stage, the boy opens his eyes. He looks out at the crowd, not to impress them, but to connect. In that sea of strangers, he sees faces softening. He sees hands covering mouths. He sees tears beginning to fall. The second verse arrives. The boy's voice grows deeper, fuller, layered with years beyond his age. The sound fills every corner of the theater, bouncing off walls, reaching places words cannot. It carries the dust of carpentry sites, the echo of empty plates, the strength of a father who never gave up. Somewhere in the audience, a woman sobs quietly. The boy doesn't falter. He steps closer to the edge of the stage, his voice steady, his body still. There is no choreography, no gimmicks, just a boy and his truth. The chorus hits, and the room breaks. The music swells, but his voice soars above it, raw, fearless, unstoppable. He hits a note so pure, so perfectly controlled, that time seems to pause. The audience forgets to breathe. Judges exchange glances. This is no longer an audition. This is a moment. Simon's eyes glisten. He blinks. Once. Twice. He looks down briefly, pretending to adjust his posture, but the camera catches it. A tear forms,